Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Madeline and you are watching Novel Inc. Today I'm here to discuss with you all the books that I've read so far in the month of May. I am filming this a few days early as I leave for Book Expo tomorrow, as I'm filming this at least. Today is May 28th, so there's still a couple days left in the month. I'll likely get a little more reading done before then, but whatever I read after this video is filmed, I will just go ahead and mention in my next wrap up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and chat about the 11 books I've read so far in May. The first book I read in the month of May was an audiobook listen, and that was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I have been wanting to read this for a while as a lot of my friends have recommended it to me. It is a 2018 release. It came out a couple months ago, and my library had it on audio, which I was very thankful for. This book is unique in that it's told through slam poetry, which is a really fun format that you don't see often in books in general, let alone YA books, and the audiobook was a really fun reading experience because it's read by the author. Her performance was fantastic. I thought that hearing the words performed as she intended for them to be read added to the whole reading experience. But anyway, The Poet X follows our main character, Xiomara. She is a 15-year-old girl living in New York City, and it really is one of those YA books that I would class as kind of a slice of life book. It's about her kind of growing into herself and struggling with the expectations put on her by her culture. She is Dominican American. The expectations that her culture puts on her, the expectations that her family places on her, that her friends place on her, that her church and her school place on her. So she's kind of struggling with all these ideals and expectations of what other people think she should be, and she's also trying to figure out who she actually is. And I always love reading stories about coming into yourself because I think that that is something that people of any age can relate to. And overall, I thought this book was really well done. Like I said, would absolutely recommend the audiobook, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in May was a very different sort of book than The Poet X, and that was Let Me Lie by Claire Mcintosh. Claire Mcintosh, if you don't know, is a writer of adult thrillers. This is her 3rd novel. I received an e-galley of this book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review. I really do enjoy Claire Mcintosh's writing. I think it's very smart. I think it subverts a lot of harmful tropes that the thriller genre tends to lean on, and she always throws in an extra twist that I never see coming, even when I think that I have it all figured out. So I really appreciate that about her books. However, Let Me Lie was just not my favorite of them. It's probably my least favorite, to be honest. In Let Me Lie, we follow our main character, Anna, who is a young woman in her mid to late 20s, and both of her parents have died within the past year, and the police have ruled their deaths as copycat suicides. So her dad committed suicide 7 months ago, and then 4 months later, her mother committed suicide in exactly the same way as her father did. And on the anniversary of her father's death, she receives an anonymous note in her mailbox that alludes to the fact that maybe there's something more to her parents' deaths than the police may have seen. So this book is told in multiple perspectives. We have, of course, Anna, the main character's perspective, which is written in first person present tense, and then we have that of Murray Mackenzie, who is a retired detective who decides to help Anna investigate this case, even though he is retired and he could get in trouble if he was being found to be investigating this case that the police department has already closed. His perspective is told in 3rd person past tense, which is a thing that Mcintosh has done in her past books, and I simply do not understand why the shift in perspectives. Why is one of them told in 1st person present and the other is told in 3rd person past? I fail to understand this choice. It always pulls me out of the story. I don't know if she's just trying to differentiate between the perspectives, but if you are having to resort to a change in voice in order to differentiate between the perspectives of a 28-year-old mother and a 70-year-old retired grizzled police detective, then you're clearly doing something wrong. This is just a choice that really irritates me, and I think it particularly irritated me in this book because I didn't find the mystery all that compelling or interesting. The pacing tended to drag a little bit in the middle of the story, and overall this just didn't wow me. It was just okay. I ended up giving Let Me Lie a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next thing I read in May was A Quick and Easy Guide to They Them Pronouns by Archie Bongiovanni and Tristan Jimerson. I received an advanced reader's copy of this from the publisher Oni Press. This comes out on June 12th and I really enjoyed this. It's a graphic novel and it does exactly what it claims. It is a quick and easy guide to they them pronouns. It's very straightforward, it's put in terms that are easily digestible, the art is super cute, and it was a fun, quick read. The thing that I appreciated the most about this is probably the fact that it's intended for both cis people who have non-binary people or people who use they them pronouns in their lives and who want to be better educated about using they them pronouns, but it's also intended for individuals who themselves use they them pronouns. One of the authors is non-binary and uses they them pronouns, and the other is a cis man. I thought the fact that this could appeal to those two audiences was really nice and refreshing, and like I said, this comes out June 12th and I highly recommend that you pick it up. It's cute, it's a quick read. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. The next thing I read in May was Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. I emailed the publisher and requested an ARC of this book and they were gracious enough to send one my way, so thank you to Little Brown for sending this to me. If you don't know, Escaping from Houdini is the third book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper companion series. And if you're familiar with this book, you might be thinking, Madeline, why did you read this book in May when it comes out in September? That's very early. You're correct. I normally would not do that, but I wanted to go ahead and read any outstanding physical or e-arcs that I had currently at my apartment before I went to Book Expo and got a ton of new arcs to read. So I just kind of wanted to get books like this out of the way so that I didn't have to worry about them once I brought home the deluge of new arcs. Yeah, anyone who knows me knows that I really love the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. However, this installment didn't really do anything for me. I'll still read future books in the series, but this was definitely a letdown. Part of it was just personal because I do not enjoy circus books. I just don't like them. They're not my thing. Anything involving circuses, carnivals, carnival workers, I don't get the appeal. They're just not my thing. Like, really heavily not something that I'm interested in reading. And this book does heavily involve a carnival. It's set on a cruise ship. The main character and her cohorts are on a cruise ship from London to New York City, and every night this carnival called the Moonlight Carnival provides entertainment for passengers. But then a series of murders start happening that seem to be tied in some way to the carnival. So Audrey Rose and Thomas, who is her love interest, partner in crime, best friend, whatever, they start to investigate these murders. Like I said, the whole circus thing didn't do it for me, didn't add anything to the story. In fact, for me personally, detracted from the story. Another thing I really didn't like about this is that a love triangle develops that I just was not on board with. I really love Audrey Rose and Thomas as a couple. I think they complement each other very well, but the other like potential love interest that's introduced in this story, I was not a big fan. I thought that Audrey Rose made pretty awful decisions when she was around him, and the way she treated Thomas in this book is honestly really terrible, and she never really apologized to him for it. The writing also felt a little clunky. Like, I've never thought that this series was the epitome of excellent young adult writing, but this book in particular, the writing felt a little bit juvenile and a little bit poorly put together. Mystery just didn't really intrigue me all that much because it was involving the carnival, and I was excited about the cruise ship setting, but that didn't really play a part in the story. Overall, like, this was okay. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but honestly it might be more like a 2.5 star. Definitely my least favorite in the series so far, but I will probably continue to read more books in this series. The next book, I'm not sure how much I'm going to talk about in this video. It was another audio listen, and that was Everything Here is Beautiful by Mira T. Lee. I decided to pick this up because my library had it, and I had heard Celeste Ng, whom I love as an author, recommend this book, and so I was very excited to read it. I went into it with high hopes, and while it was really beautifully written, I was really hurt by this book. I found it incredibly harmful in its depiction of mental illness, and the ending in particular I think is really upsetting and could be harmful for a lot of people who have mental illness. I would just say if you, like me, are someone who lives with mental illness, just don't pick up this book, because I haven't really heard anyone talking about this, but not a good depiction of mental illness in my opinion, because it's told from multiple perspectives, and one of the main characters has a mental illness. It's never specifically diagnosed, but bipolar disorder is mentioned, as is schizophrenia. However, the book chose to focus more on how her having a mental illness was a burden to her loved ones, like her sister and her husband and her boyfriend, instead of on her experiences living with the disease. I found that to just be in really poor taste. I've been thinking about writing a longer Goodreads review of this. I just want to put some distance between me reading this book and me writing a review of it, because I did find it so hurtful. Did not rate this. I probably will not rate it. The writing, gorgeous. The depiction of mental illness, a total miss in my opinion. However, things turned around after that, because the next book I read was Wild Blue Wonder by Carrie Sorosiak. This comes out in June. I received an e-arc from HarperCollins for review, so thank you to them for sending that my way, because this was a great book. Wild Blue Wonder is a young adult contemporary with some fabulous elements, set at a summer camp, and we follow two different timelines. So we follow our main character Quinn in the present, which is during the fall and the winter, and we also follow her during the summer while the camp is full of campers and things like that. And as readers, we find out early on in the book that there has been some big traumatic event that's happened to Quinn and her family somewhere in between the summer and the current time, that has totally shaken their lives and changed the way that they interact with each other. But we don't know what exactly happened, and so it's told through these two different perspectives. We follow this event unfolding during the summer, and then we follow Quinn and the aftermath of this event as well. This was really beautifully written. I thought that the fabulous elements were really well incorporated. They were just the right amount. For example, the main character spends a large portion of the book trying to find a sea monster that's rumored to live in her family's lake on their property. So things like that just kind of really enchanted me. YA contemporaries with like magical realist and fabulous elements are like my favorite things to read lately, and this was a great one. You get a really sweet romance that develops. The family relationships are really well explored, particularly those between Quinn and her two siblings, and the three of them have not spoken since this accident happened. So we're kind of figuring out how, you know, they were so close before and like why they haven't spoken since. It just deals a lot with grief and processing grief and how different individuals process grief in different ways. And it also kind of discusses like how do you forgive yourself when something so traumatic happens and you feel that you could have maybe prevented some part of it from happening. The prose was lovely, and I just thought the concept was really well explored. I ended up giving Wild Blue Wonder a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'll have a review of it going up on my blog later this month. Next, I picked up Royals by Rachel Hawkins. This was right after the royal wedding, and I was so in the mood to read a royal romance, and I asked for recommendations on Twitter, and a lot of people recommended this. I'm very glad they did. I don't know why I wasn't caught up in the hype for this book leading up to its release. Like, why did I not read an arc of this? Like, why was I not anticipating this? Because it was so up my alley, and I ended up enjoying it so much. It was exactly what I wanted to read at the time. In Royals, we follow our main character Daisy, whose older sister has recently gotten engaged to the Crown Prince of Scotland. So a lot of the story is set in Scotland. Daisy and her family go there for a summer, and hijinks ensue. I really love this. It was total YA fluff, but it was really compulsively readable. It was not problematic that I noticed, and it just served to make me very happy, and I'm so excited to read future books in this series because I do think it's going to be a series. I ended up giving Royals a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I actually reread my favorite book of last year, which was The Girl with the Red Balloon by Katherine Locke. If you watch my reading vlog, you know that this book emotionally destroyed me. just like it did the first time. I set out a goal for myself at the beginning of 2018 of 5 books that I wanted to reread this year, and this was one of them. I've been trying to check one of them off every month. I don't really know what I can say about this book that I haven't already like screamed about a million times on my blog or on Twitter. I'll leave my review that I wrote when I originally read it down below because I feel like it articulates my feelings on this book very well. This is one of the most important stories that I think has been written in recent years, and I do not understand why it is not read or talked about more often on BookTube and in the blogging community. It's kind of a time travel, like historical fantasy. Main character Ellie is on a class trip with her high school German class visiting Berlin, and she ends up grabbing onto a red balloon for like a photo op, and when she grabs onto this balloon, she's actually transported back to East Berlin in 1988, before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so she gets sucked into this world of balloon magic and East Berlin in 1988. It is very communist. The romance that develops is one of my favorites that has like ever been written. It's gorgeous. Ellie, our main character, I find so relatable and so real and honest, and the questions that this book grapples with about morality and about history and how we paint history, so beautiful. This is just a beautiful, beautiful book, and I want everyone in the world to read it forever. Go read my review down below because it's more articulate than I'm being right now. Of course, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Easily done, yes. After that, I actually picked up The Spy with the Red Balloon, which I had an arc of from the publisher. This is not a prequel, not a sequel, it's a companion novel to The Girl with the Red Balloon. So it uses the same magic system as Girl with the Red Balloon, but it's actually set in the 1940s during World War II, and we follow 2 Jewish siblings who are recruited by the US government to work on the Manhattan Project, which was the atomic bomb, if you didn't know. And like Girl with the Red Balloon, it just focuses on a lot on questions of morality. Oh yeah, Girl with the Red Balloon as well as Spy with the Red Balloon both have Own Voices Jewish rep, which I really appreciated. The 2 main characters, like I mentioned, are both siblings, and they both have queer romances develop. One of the siblings is demisexual as well, and that was really great representation to read. I believe that is Own Voices as well. Yeah, I loved the main characters in Spy with the Red Balloon. I thought that it asked a lot of important questions, just like Girl with the Red Balloon did, and I enjoyed reading about this magic system in a different time period than in Girl with the Red Balloon, and we get to learn a lot about how the balloon magic started and how it became the way it is in Girl with the Red Balloon, which I found really fascinating. So I ended up giving The Spy with the Red Balloon a 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed. Then I listened to another audiobook, and that was Text Me When You Get Home by Kaeleen Shafer. This is a nonfiction book about female friendship, and it fell pretty flat for me, to be honest. It felt very one-dimensional and surface level. Like, it also felt a little bit dated to me. The references that the author made and the things she chose to talk about were just not very current, even though this book was published in 2018, so it was published this year. I think that the way that she thinks about female friendship is very different from the way that myself and my friends and like quote-unquote younger millennials think about female friendship. In my opinion, it also could have been organized in a more cohesive way. It fell flat for me. It wasn't great. I ended up giving this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. The last thing that I've read so far in May was Blame It on Bianca Del Rio by Bianca Del Rio. This was another audio listen. If you are not familiar, Bianca Del Rio, it was the winner of season 6 of RuPaul's Drag Race, and she is like Drag Race royalty, and this is just a very like lighthearted book. It's just basically her giving advice to people who sent her letters, but she's an insult comic, so her comedy is very biting and very aggressive. Not really real advice, it's very like funny and as a joke, you know. I thought this was fine. I like Bianca a lot, but I think for me, humor translates best in the moment, and in this book it felt a little bit canned and not as witty, and her quick wit is what I admire the most about her, and this, I don't know, like I said, this book just felt a little bit canned, a little bit like, it's not as funny as she normally is, I don't know. Also, I mean, her humor is very aggressive and very offensive. She goes after everyone and takes no prisoners, and I think that in this book, unfortunately, that really just came off as pretty like fat phobic and racist. And I know like it's a joke, whatever, but for me, like it kind of, she definitely crossed the line a few times, and when she makes jokes like that in person, I feel like you can kind of tell that it's a joke, but in the book, her delivery is very, you know, straight to the point, and that's like part of her delivery as a comic. And I just was a little bit uncomfortable with some of the jokes. So I ended up just giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I think if you like Bianca and you appreciate her humor, this is still worth a read, but it didn't always nail it for me. Whew, so that was a lot of talking. This is probably gonna be a very long video, so thanks for sticking around till the end if you did, but those are the 11 books I've read so far in May. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments if you have read any of the books that I mentioned and what you thought of them. Tell me what you read this month, I would love to know. Until next time, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye.